Well, it's safe to say most of you watching, you've watched a reality competition show and thought to yourselves, what is it really like to film these types of shows? Our guest today has those answers. He's an Emmy Award-winning producer who's worked on shows like Big Brother, Naked and Afraid, The Amazing Race, and now he's giving his insight and telling some behind-the-scenes stories. He's huge on TikTok. Look at this.
Debunking common myths about reality television. Myth number 1, reality television isn't real. But believe it or not, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Come on, Patrick, you're full of it. Of course you script it. I've worked in reality television for 17 years, and I've never seen a script on set, outside of just the host doing their stand-up or in post-production when we need to write copy for a narrator. And while it's true there are scenes that are set up in reality television, what the participant is going through is real to them. That's the magic of what reality producers do. Have you ever seen somebody cry on reality?
Busting down the myths. Well, that is producer Patrick. As you heard him say, he has over 20 years of experience in production and reality TV. Everybody give it up for Patrick. Hi, buddy. Thank you for doing this, man.
Oh, hey, Jason. How's everything in the Great White North of Minneapolis?
You know what? It's pretty good. A little rainy, but you know, Patrick, at least there's no snow. That's all we care about. No snow.
Right,
no.
That's the minimum bar there, right?
Yeah.
All right, it's good to hear that. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, my friend, I've been looking forward to this. I've been following you for a while, and I want to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit later, but for people that aren't like me and obsessed with you, tell the folks, what was your first gig in TV, Patrick?
You know, believe it or not, my first gig when I left college was actually in news. So I worked for CBS News, and I worked for what was Court TV at the time. I was Nancy Grace's production assistant. That was one of my first jobs. So, you know, shout out to live broadcast, shout out to everybody in the master control room on the show, to the teleprompter person who's like making all the words go up and down on your screen. So there's some love in my heart for live broadcasts.
What was your first big reality show, Patrick?
The first big reality show I did was a show called Kid Nation, which has a lot of, like, if you know the show, a lot of people described it as the Lord of the Flies of television. It was a lot of taking a bunch of kids, throwing them out in the desert. This was, again, sort of the Wild West, no pun intended, of reality television at the time. So anything went back then in the aughts. But what was interesting, it was a CBS show, and there was a lot of producers that were on The Amazing Race and on Big Brother that, fortunately enough, I made an impression and was able to transfer onto those shows and work on The Amazing Race and Big Brother after that.
Let's talk about Let's talk about The Amazing Race for a second. In our meeting today, Patrick, I said this to the crew. I said, you know what? For a million reasons, I can't wait to talk to Patrick. And one of the reasons is I've always wanted, I've said this anecdotally on this show when I'm, spitballing about, whatever the reality TV dish is. I've always said, I would imagine that The Amazing Race would be one of the hardest reality shows to produce because of the amount of people and the travel and the fact that you're dealing with different jurisdictions. You're dealing with different laws in different countries. Am I right on that, Patrick?
I would actually take it a step further, and I would say it's actually the hardest show to produce in television. And just across the board. It takes about 5 to 6 months of pre-production to make the show happen. And The Amazing Race, it is a live race first. It's a television show second. So the whole show takes place in about 3 weeks. So it's a very short time frame to actually film the show because you are racing around the world. And you are like, when you're a producer on it, you don't know what time zone you're in. You don't know like what country you're in. You're just like, you're on set and you're like, there's a camel and and then now I'm in the rainforest, now I'm in the tundra. And then when you get done, you say, that's it. I'm not doing the show ever again. I am done. And then of course, you get a phone call and they're like, hey, we got picked up for a second season. You in? And you go, yeah, okay, I'm in. Because there is like this magic to it about traveling the world and being able to circumnavigate the globe. I was able to be a producer on it for many seasons, and I'm very grateful for that.
One of the things I don't think the people at home know or would so therefore not appreciate, our producers were talking about the fact that each contestant Patrick, what, they have an audio person and a camera person for each contestant, am I right? And those people have to be in better shape than the damn contestants. Is that true?
Oh, 100%. I would say the cameramen on The Amazing Race, who also are producers too, because there's no producers with the team. It's just the audio and the camera guy. And, you know, they're also getting all the shots while these contestants are running. So you got to imagine that the camera guy is doing double the work that the contestant is actually doing. And funny story, I was actually vacationing in Hawaii, and I was in Kauai, and I was on the Nepali coast, which is a very remote trail. It's an 11-mile trail, and I was hiking on it one day, and all of a sudden I see this familiar face running in the opposite direction, and I go, wait a second, I know this person. And I realized it was actually one of the directors of photography from The Amazing Race, and I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm training. What are you doing here? I'm like, well, I'm trying to have a romantic getaway, but nice to see you.
Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, I got to ask Patrick about a certain story of his that concerns falling asleep, plus the status of the industry right now and more. More of Patrick when we return. Back after this. Stay with us. We're back now chatting with producer Patrick. Okay, Patrick, you got to tell him the story from The Amazing Race. Something about you fell asleep, my friend. Pick up the story, if you will.
So, you know, on Amazing Race, because you don't sleep on the show, again, you're traveling so fast and you don't know where you are, you actually get your time to catch up on sleep on airplanes. So you actually look forward to longer flights. You're like, wow, that's a 12-hour flight, that's a 15-hour flight. All right, I'm actually going to get some shut-eye. So and of course, I have a little help to help me fall asleep. There's a magical little pill called Ambien. And, you know, I followed this rule, which is, you know, you can take your pill after the plane leaves the ground. Because I've had this situation where you take the pill before the plane leaves around and, like, they cancel the flight and everybody off the plane and you're just kind of wandering through the airport like a zombie. So, I was on this flight for the show, and you know, I had my cocktail and I had my dinner, and then I fell asleep, and I woke up, and I was feeling so refreshed, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to get to work. And I look around me on the plane, and everybody's face is like white and panicked, and hair disheveled, and bags under the eyes, and it looked like everybody had the worst time of their life. And I was like, what happened? And I talked to another producer who was on the flight with me. He goes, you didn't experience any of that? And I'm like, any of what? He goes, the plane was basically in a vertical dive at one point, and the overhead compartments were going, and luggage was coming out, and babies were screaming, and people were screaming, and I was like, no, I was having the best sleep of my life. So I was like, I'm so glad that I didn't experience that, and God forbid had something happen to the plane. That's the way I want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I was as calm as a Hindu cow on that flight. So
I bet. Do you guys try out the challenges yourself, my friend, as a producer?
So, you know, a lot of times, and this actually expands to not just The Amazing Race, but a lot of competition reality.
Yeah.
You have these challenges, you have these games on shows like Survivor, Big Brother, any show that you see where there's sort of a monetary prize and people play these games, they have to be tested because you can't, when you have television, you can't just kind of like throw chance to the wind and say, all right, I'm going to let this contestant try this and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, CBS Legal wouldn't like that too much, Patrick.
No, the lawyers wouldn't like it because that's also when mistakes happen, and you actually have to test these games multiple times. A lot of times we test them in the parking lots of the production companies that we're working for because we want to make sure we get it right. We want to know how slow it takes, how fast it goes, how quick can you do it. Sometimes they actually get a bunch of people, they get a bus that goes to Hollywood Boulevard and they're like, hey, you guys want to do something interesting? They shove them on a bus, they make them sign all NDAs, and they take these people to our parking lot where they have to test these challenges out. And then when we finally kind of fine tune it, a lot of times when we get into the field or on location where we're filming, then it is up to the producer to be sort of the final check and balance to test out the actual challenges on the show.
Patrick, I love that you're just pulling. Hey, Debbie from Orlando, get off the bus. So we're gonna put you on a trampoline.
They love it. They're just like, oh my gosh, this is great. And you're like, you can never tell it to any of your friends.
Yeah, never.
There's a bunch of lawyers that'll show up at your house.
When we come back, what's Patrick doing now? The state of the industry. What's it like working on Naked and Afraid? Holy crap, and more. We'll be right back. Back in a moment, friends. More with producer Patrick. Patrick, what does make a really good contestant? You as a producer, what are you? I know it's a very broad question. You've been asked 1,000 times. But what are you usually looking for? Is it just that intangible, a spark in somebody?
I think really if you had to shave it down to what we're ultimately looking for in a contestant, it's authenticity and someone who's actually genuine. What you see on the screen is what you get. That's who they are. Because I think a lot of times when people audition to be on reality shows, they want to create this persona, this sort of facade of who they think producers are expecting to see.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, people are like, I'm going to be the funny guy, and I'm going to have one joke at every time. And it's like, no, just be yourself. Because what happens is on our shows, as you know, we put our contestants through the gauntlet. So all of a sudden they're put into extreme stressful situations where whoever you're trying to pretend to be, we'll get rid of it in 48 hours. The real you is going to show up.
Yeah.
And that's why, especially couples on shows where they're just like, you know what? We're just trying to get back together. We're kind of we're separated.
Yeah.
And we think a show like this is really gonna bring out the best of us and really get us closer together. And us producers, we're just kind of greasing our palms. We're like, perfect.
Talk about
because next thing you know, they're in a rowboat screaming at each other.
Yeah.
I hate you too. And but I think really you're looking for a person who is natural on the screen and off the screen, because no matter what situation you're going to put in it, you're going to get that authentic, genuine person.
Naked and Afraid is another producing credit on your resume as you smile. What's day one like when you just walk on set and then there they are, just buck naked? I mean,
I don't walk on set. That's the worst part. Is I'm just kind of like, all right, guys, it's time. I think you have to be very professional.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah.
You have to. You're not making fun of them. You're not gawking at them. You're not ogling them. You're saying, okay, this is a real challenge, and you're about to spend 30 days in the wilderness, completely vulnerable. So I think there's a lot of respect that comes from producers on that show to the people actually doing the challenge, and we show that respect. Is it a little awkward at first? It is, I think, but that quickly wears off because you start realizing, when you're naked and all of a sudden you're surrounded by absolute nothing and you have to survive, you realize being naked is the least of your problems.
Absolutely.
I'm thirsty, I need to find water, I need to find food, I need to build a shelter. So all of a sudden it's for the one moment that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm completely exposed, you're like, okay, this is not a problem anymore. I have a bunch of other problems I need to take care of.
I don't want to run out of time before we've had a lot of fun, but I do, because one of the things I admire about you, and I really like following you, not just for the behind the scenes, juicy stories, but I think when, I don't want to make assumptions, but when a lot of people think of Hollywood, they think of the 10% of stars that represent Hollywood. It really, though, is, and you've said this on a couple of your posts, it's a working town. I mean, it's a working middle-class town, really, full of craftsmen and wardrobe people and boom operators. And right now, the industry isn't doing real well, is it, Patrick?
It was surprising because one day the faucet just turned off. And and the jobs that were always lucrative and always there just kind of stopped. A lot of people talk about the strikes that happened with the WGA and the Actors Guild, and that was just actually a problem that was already on top of a major problem that was happening. But a lot of us in the entertainment industry, where we are gig workers, so we work job to job, we started realizing quickly that it wasn't just us, because a lot of people first internalize it. They're like, "Oh my God, was it something I did? Did I say something on set? Did I make a boo-boo?" But you start realizing, oh my gosh, I'm out of work, you're out of work, and you're out of work, and you're out of work. And so all of a sudden, it became this this is a much more serious situation, because the growing pains of a media constantly changing, where broadcast isn't as popular as it used to be 20 years ago, and everything is changing to streaming, and COVID only accelerated that. So everything happened really fast, and the industry changed really fast. But I think all of a sudden people were breaking barriers and not really seeing what were the repercussions that were going to come of that. And I think that's really what we're starting to see today.
Absolutely. What are you doing now? You're working on The Quest, right, Patrick?
The Quest? Oh, no, The Quest was two.
Oh, that's right. That's an old one. That's an old one. What are you working on now, my friend? Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What are you working on now, my friend?
I have a couple stokes in the fire. I can't talk about it because of those, lawyers that, hang out. There's probably one in my room right now standing in the corner.
Are you kidding me, Patrick? There's one upstairs from where we're doing the damn show. So, yeah, I get it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Please come back, my friend. I'm a huge, huge fan of yours, and I appreciate you sticking around with us today.
Well, thanks for reaching out. It was a lot of fun to be on.
Thank you. Follow him on TikTok, everybody. Just look up producer Patrick. You'll get more stories. And I know the audience wanted me to ask if the naked people were having sex, but I didn't. I know. But he got very serious about it, and I wanted to be respectful. I couldn't follow him and go, "Are they having sex?" We'll be right back. Back in a moment, everybody.